Welcome to the 27th episode of the Tertius Times podcast. Today is Tuesday, September 28th, 2021. I'm your host, Brian Wright, and today in the news segment, we will look at Buddhist nationalism in Myanmar, Chinese Communist Party tactics against religious, particularly Christian education, and deadly Hindu extremist actions against a teenage Christian boy in India. There is no interview segment for this week, but I am in communication with someone who has done enormous work on behalf of the persecuted church. God willing, that interview will be available soon. Quote, while Buddhism is rarely associated with extremism or violence, the 53-year-old controversial Buddhist monk Ashin Wirathu espouses a militant view that justifies the use of force against religious and cultural others and supports authoritarian regimes, unquote, stated the article, Myanmar's Extreme Buddhist Nationalists, September 21st, 2021, from The Interpreter. Wirathu's, quote, sermons have been blamed for inciting anti-Muslim violence over the last decade. In 2011, quote, following deadly violence between Buddhist and ethnic minority Rohingya Muslims in the country's restive Western Rakhine state, unquote, Wirathu allegedly incited, quote, hate speech against the Rohingyas, unquote, accusing them of illegally immigrating from Bangladesh, quote, despite many other families living in Myanmar for generations, unquote, the article stated. Despite being banned from Facebook and barred from speaking by the National Monks Council in 2018 and following Rohingya militant attacks in 2017, which, quote, triggered a brutal counterinsurgency campaign by Myanmar's army, unquote. Wirathu, quote, continued to maintain an online presence and gave speeches around the country, unquote, until he turned himself into authorities in November 2020. The organization he led, Ma Ba Tha, meaning the Committee to Protect Race and Religion, quote, successfully lobbied for laws that limit the civil rights of Muslim minorities in Myanmar, unquote. Earlier this year, in spite of the ruling party of Aung San Suu Kyi having won the election in a landslide, the military seized power. Quote, more than 1,000 people have been killed in crackdowns on dissent amid nationwide protests and skirmishes between the army, civilian protesters, and anti-junta militias, unquote. The article concludes that, quote, by tailoring its messages towards Buddhist nationalists, the Tatmadaw, or the Burmese military, has arguably demonstrated its willingness to promote a Buddhist identity in Myanmar and corral the support of hardliners from the Buddhist Sangha to help reinforce state power. In the current volatile environment, Wirathu's release, along with other developments, may exacerbate Buddhist nationalism and religious extremist sentiments further in a country with a long history of ethnic tensions, unquote. Pray for Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, that those who follow Buddhism will divorce themselves from oppressive rhetoric and actions against their fellow citizens, particularly the Rohingya. Pray for the Rohingya, that the nearly genocidal pogroms against them will completely stop, and they will be welcomed in the country of their ancestors. Pray for the leaders of Myanmar, that they will realize their responsibilities include protection of all of its residents, no matter the religion they follow or their particular ethnicity. Quote, in the morning of September 4th, a Christian music high school in China's Harbin, Heilongjiang province was raided by the local authorities. According to Christian Music School Raided, Principal Arrested, September 9th, 2021, from International Christian Concern. Quote, dozens of students and teachers were taken away for investigation. The principal was intercepted and arrested on his way to drop off his child, unquote, the article added. The raid occurred at 8:30 a.m. when over 30 Chinese Communist Party CCP officials, quote, more than 100 students and most of the staff, unquote, were interrogated for 24 hours and then released. Quote, school property, unquote, the article continued, quote, such as pianos, computers, and documents were confiscated in the process, unquote. Following his arrest, the whereabouts of the school principal remains a mystery. A possible charge, many fear, will be filed against the principal that may include, quote, enticing minors to religion, unquote, or, quote, for providing illegal education under financial crime, unquote, since the students were charged tuition. The message from the CCP seems to be to frighten others who run Christian schools and churches so they fully conform and embrace CCP's mind control ideology. Pray for China, particularly the Christian minority who live there, that they will enjoy freedom of conscience without governmental interference or intimidation. Pray for all those who live in China that they may also experience an unburdening of CCP control and live without fear of oppression. Pray for the leaders of China that they would recognize their God-given responsibilities to protect the freedom of their people, and they would shed their desire for complete control of everyone in China. Nitish Kumar, a 14-year-old Christian, was heading home in Compton Nagar village, Bihar, after his morning routine of purchasing fresh vegetables when three, quote, suspected Hindu extremists threw flammable liquid on him and set him on fire. According to Christian Boy 14, clinging to life after burn attack in eastern India, September 13th, 2021, from Morning Star News. Nitish suffered burns over, quote, 65% of his body, with 15% deep burns, unquote. Unfortunately, the family was unable to find Nitish, quote, an adequate burn hospital unit until 4 days after the attack. The article adds that Nitish and his, quote, family has faced opposition from Hindu extremists from Nitish's village and from Kurwa since they left Hinduism for Christianity 2 years ago, said Nitish's 17-year-old brother, Sanjit Kumar, unquote. Threats had been made against local Christians in the past, but Sanjit stated, quote, it did not deter us from our faith, unquote. He added that Hindu extremists would block routes to churches on Sundays and question those they stopped why they were headed to church. Some of the implied assumptions the extremists voiced are very typical. The Christians were paid or rewarded in some way to convert, or even that they were forced to attend services. The attempts to pull the expected answers out of the Christians, as Sanjit indicates, is normally met with the truth that none of those assumptions are true, which can only serve to frustrate the Hindu extremists even more, who then work themselves into a frenzy and seek to do physical violence against Christians for invalidating their presumptions. The Kumar family converted to Christ 2 years ago following a deliverance, quote, from tormenting spirits, unquote, by local Christians. The family also saw a restoration of health as well, which they attribute also to the Christian prayers. The pastor of the church the family attends, Deepak Kumar, stated the persecution has increased in the last 2 years. Churches are damaged or destroyed, and Christians receive threats on a constant basis. Government officials of the BJP, or the Bharatiya Janata Party, the ruling party of India, quote, has emboldened Hindu extremists in several parts of the country to attack Christians since Prime Minister Narendra Modi took power in May 2014, religious rights activists say, unquote. Unfortunately, according to an update to the article on September 26th, Nitish passed away shortly after midnight. Pray for India and pray especially for its Christian minority, who are often among the poorest in the country and thus are mostly removed from having any substantial political power. Pray for their protection and endurance. Pray that God continues to grant them strength and resolve. Pray for all those in India that they would welcome each other openly and without hidden presuppositions and live in peace among themselves. Pray especially for those radical Hindu extremists who wish to rid the country of quote unquote foreign religions, particularly Christianity. Pray that their hearts would be softened so they view everyone as made in God's image, people to be valued, not burned. And finally, pray for the Kumar family that God provides them immense comfort over the loss of their son and that they continue to be a beacon shining brightly for Jesus. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you found the information and interview presented here useful, and it encouraged you to pray for these people in areas of concern, and perhaps even inspires you to take positive steps of involvement to alleviate the suffering of so many around the globe. Finally, pray with me that God's peace, eternally beyond our comprehension, guard the hearts and minds of all those who follow Christ and flow outward to bring that peace to all the world.